In progress.
All right, good evening. This is going to be a presentation on the New Jersey Pinelands by Elena Golden for Conservation Biology with Dr. McCall, Spring 1, 2022 for the University of West Alabama. So just a brief overview of what we're going to cover in this presentation. We're going to discuss a little bit about the history of the area, cultural history, and just general history of the area. A little bit of the geography, climate, flora and fauna, and how it affects the economy and how it all works together and why it's such an important feature in the state of New Jersey and what the management plan really looks like there. So the New Jersey Pine Barrens or Pinelands, depending on your choice of term, was the first national reserve in the country. Congress created the National Pinelands National Reserve following the National Parks and Recreation Act in 1978. It covers about 1.1 million acres in New Jersey, spans about 7 counties, and covers about 56 municipalities. And as you can see, that's a lot of politics there and a lot of potential red tape. And 22% of New Jersey's land area. So it's a big space. It is also the largest open space on the East Coast on the eastern seaboard. The reason for the discrepancy in the name of the Pinelands, early settlers called it Pine Barrens because they were unable to grow things in the sandy, acidic soil. So they deemed it the Pine Barrens. We know now that it's actually teeming with life. So we've changed to the Pinelands. We refer to the Pinelands. But if you're a local, like me, you just say the Pines. So I'll be probably using them interchangeably throughout this presentation. We think about the pines, we always drive down through the pines on our way to the shore. It's a Jersey thing. So take a look at this map. This is going to give us a look at kind of just the overall space. You can see this is the Delaware River here. I don't know if you can see my mouse through here. Hopefully you can. That's the Delaware River. And here, oh yes, I have a laser pointer. Here's the Delaware River here. And this is just a quick look at the space that this takes up. So if you're looking at this, the upper part is sort of, there's a big military base up here. This is probably Fort Dix, McGuire Air Force Base, big area there. If you come down through here, it says Special Agriculture Production Area. Definitely we have, we'll get into a little bit later, but cranberries and blueberries is the crops of choice here. And the green areas are the forested areas and the brown areas are the preservation areas. Within those areas, you're going to find your state parks, good places for camping, recreation areas, good, beautiful trails, nice places to go for a walk if you like. So this is about the aquifer that is beneath the Pine Barrens. So this green outline you can see here is the outlines of the actual Pine Barrens or Pinelands National Reserve. But the blue is the aquifer that actually lies beneath it and then beyond actually. So if you're not familiar with what an aquifer is, it's an underground sediment layer that stores and moves water underground. So it's a huge reservoir. It's estimated that this aquifer has around 17 trillion gallons of water. That's of concern not only to the inhabitants of the ecosystem, but also to the people living and working in the area as well. It's known as a superficial aquifer because the water is so close to the land surface, and the surface water and the groundwater intermingle. So pollution is definitely a concern for an aquifer like this. And again, the soil is very sandy, so it's porous and rainwater can get down relatively quickly. About 90% of the water in the wetlands and rivers and streams come from this source. So pretty much all of it. And it provides drinking water to around 1 million people. again, there's not as many people living in the center of the pines as you may think. They are there. And again, the coastal areas are barrier islands here, all the way down to Cape May, Wildwood, Atlantic City. All those areas, the pines stretch all the way out pretty much to the coast. And that, of course, we know the coast always has plenty of people. So one of the uses we talked about there is military use. And again, here's on the map here, Browns Mills area. You can see kind of close again to the shore areas. But yeah, this is a major military base in New Jersey. Fort Dix and McGuire have combined. Fort Dix McGuire now. Used to be two separate, one for Air Force, one for Army, but now they're combined. And you can see they use a lot of this space for drills. And anyone who lives in this area can tell you that on a clear day you could hear booms. They usually let the public know that they're going to be doing drills or whatever, but those booms echo through the pines and to all the neighboring areas. But it's definitely a space that they utilize as well. Another big contender for space in the New Jersey Pinelands is agriculture. The big ones, again, like I mentioned, are blueberries and cranberries. If you take a look, if you ever get a chance to go see a cranberry harvest, it's absolutely amazing. But cranberries float. So as they ripen, they float to the top, and they use these sort of, floating devices to corral them in. Ocean Spray has a large facility in South Jersey. I'm going to talk about that in a minute as well. And blueberries. Blueberries grow really well in the sandy, acidic soil. Even before these blueberry farms were here, you could actually, if you're walking through the woods, say if you're camping or whatever, down by the water, a lot of high bush blueberry just grows wild in the Pine Barrens, in the Pinelands. So it's one of the type of plants called a heath. It's in the same vein as like mountain laurels, like wild azaleas, swamp azaleas, things like that. They're on the same kind of family, and they grow well in those sandy, acidic soils. So a couple towns and villages to note. I know that's not typical for an ecology presentation, but I think it's important just to kind of note these couple of things, because the history and the culture of the Pine Barrens is so much a part of why they want to protect it, as well as for the nature part of it. So again, we're looking at Chatsworth. This is the old general store in Chatsworth, or one of the old general store houses in Chatsworth. It's a very small town to this day. There's one road that leads to the center of it. It's considered to be the capital of the Pine Barrens. Chatsworth is the home of Ocean Spray cranberries. So if you're drinking cranberry juice, it generally comes from this area, Ocean Spray. White's Bog, they typically have a blueberry festival, but that is also an area that is boggy and also for cranberries. So big cranberry and big blueberry areas. A lot of immigrants that came through there, I believe, were Italian immigrants that first started in White's Bog, and they were pretty much the workers that made up the area, if I remember correctly. And then the other big ones are like the coastal communities within the Pinelands. So Barnegat, this is the Barnegat Lighthouse. Fishing boats come through the coast here, and a lot of those captains of the boats or people that worked on the ships, fishing boats, they really lived and worked in the pines as well. And it was really all part of the same culture, that whole piney community. So a little bit about the climate here. The climate in New Jersey Pinelands is pretty standard with the rest of the state. Summers are hot, winters are cold. Excuse me. But it's important to note the risk of forest fires. The types of things that grow here definitely have that underbrush, and prescribed burns are usually recommended and done usually in early spring. I think more nowadays they consider that they consider doing it near people's homes, but it's important for the ecosystem as well. A lot of the vegetation and the animals that live there really depend on that. Speaking of the plants and the vegetation in the Pine Barrens, the New Jersey Pinelands are home to some of the most fascinating and unique plant species that there are. Such cool, really cool plants found there. There's about 850 different species of plants found in the Pinelands. It's also an area of interesting overlap. Some of the southern terminus and the northern terminus for certain species kind of overlap here. There's about 109 species that come up from the south that end their reach in the Pinelands, and from the north, about 14 species where they stop coming down. A couple things to consider when you think about the plants here, and you think about their environment and how fragile it is. One of the things comes from the elevation here and the water table. So climate change could have an impact on the type of vegetation here, just based on the water table there from the aquifer. So the higher elevations, you've got mostly white oaks and pitch pines. And then as you come down to the mid elevations, you're going to transition into more pines and less oaks. It's also important to note there's a whole section of pygmy pines that are just pine trees that never grow above 11 feet. And there's not a lot known about why that happened there, but they are there. You can drive past them. You can see them from one of the fire towers. It's just a whole section of pygmy pines. And then at lower elevations, you're going to get the boggy, swampy areas that are categorized more by the Atlantic white cedar trees. And that's this picture at the bottom here. Now, this picture here, they doesn't look as muddy, but I can tell you from experience, as you walk through, if you're going on a hike and you're walking through the Pinelands, you would be in one minute you'll be standing in a stand of white oaks. The next minute you could be, knee deep in bog water. And it's real easy to take a step and go in up to your knees in the bog. It's definitely an experience that I highly recommend. But not the part about getting your foot stuck. The Atlantic white cedar trees contribute really to the tea-colored or the cedar swamps here. It's very, everybody knows that the tea-colored water about the Pine Barrens. Here's a picture of it here. The best way to describe it is crystal clear, but it's brown, sort of like iced tea, or I guess you would say sweet tea. It looks just like that. It's clear, not a lot of sediment, but it's definitely a tea-colored water. And that cedar water affects the pH of the soils and what else grows there. The variety of species in the Pinelands is heavily connected to the presence of fire, as I mentioned before. In the top here, this photo, you can see that there was definitely some prescribed burn here. The underbrush is down, and you can see how high the flames went up on the trees. Again, this is the pitch pine, and you can see the resin or the pitch, the sap on there is what really protects it. So forest fires are needed for the pitch pine. This is a species of note. It's probably one of the characteristic species of the entire ecosystem, right? We call it the Pinelands for a reason, because of the pitch pine. And you can see the cones here. Some are opened and some are closed. These closed ones are called serotinous cones. And what that means is they require fire to open so their seeds to be spread out. If you ever kind of describe to you what it's like, it's almost like a popcorn kernel popping open. You could even, if you wanted to, if you find one of these cones on the ground, you could take a lighter to the bottom of it, and eventually it would kind of pop open for those seeds to get dispersed. But like I said, not all of the cones of the pitch pine are serotinous, but some are. And fire is important to them. They do have thick bark and this resin coating that helps protect them from fire damage to a certain extent. It also helps protect them from insect damage and things too. So they're a pretty hardy tree. They also have another adaptation where they can actually regrow limbs where fire damage has occurred on the lower limbs, which is unique to pitch pines. Very cool. If we didn't have as much prescribed burns and we didn't have as much pines, the white oaks would definitely take over a system like this. And that could be dangerous for a couple of reasons. Number one, they don't have the same protection as the pitch pines to regrow. And so a forest fire through a stand of white oak could potentially eliminate a good section of the tree. Whereas, yes, fire affects the pitch pines, but, birds and things living in the upper branches can return rather quickly and continue to live there. That wouldn't be the case in a white oak system. But pitch pines are also important to the animals that live there. White deer, mice, or white-tailed deer, mice, rabbits, different insects that feed on the needles and things. They all rely on the pitch pine for a food source. And that's just a major, I would even call it a keystone species in this environment. Continuing on with the flora here, the Pinelands Commission has a comprehensive management plan that includes the protection of threatened and endangered plants in the New Jersey Pinelands. I'm going to show you a link below here in just a second that gives us the list of about 92 protected species. But this picture here is of a broom crowberry. And this plant, it's not endemic to New Jersey, but this is a weird place to find it. This plant is typically found in northern localities, like up towards Canada, Labrador, things like that. But let me show you real quick. Just want to switch to turn off my laser pointer so I can click this video for you. Actually, it's not a video. So this is just a quick, I just want to show you a look at some of the list here. So sensitive joint vetch, red milkweed, silvery aster, morning glory reedgrass. These are just some of the list of the protected species here. Swamp pink, yellow asphodel, curly grass fern, and there are 92 plants on this list. You just think about the amount of biodiversity in this area, which is dominated by these large pitch pine trees, but there's so many other species of plants in this area. So let me go back to the slideshow. Okay. Some more plant species that I like to point out that I have some pictures of here, and some of them were on that list. But we'll start with the pitcher plant at the bottom corner here. This is a carnivorous plant, unique also to this area. It is a carnivorous plant. They're typically filled with fluids and insects can crawl in, fall in and get stuck and drowned. And then this is a sundew plant on this top corner here. These little drops of dew or sundew, sweet smelling, attract insects, and these kind of curl up like a, what's a good analogy? Like a party horn. Like if you blow into a horn and it rolls out and it rolls back up, they kind of roll up on the insect when they land on them. And this bottom picture here is a swamp pink. It's one of the endangered plants on the list, and this one above it is a bog asphodel. There's also approximately about 30 species of wild orchids in the Pine Barrens, and as I mentioned before, other heaths like highbush blueberry and mountain laurels make up most of the underbrush there. There's a bunch of species of fauna. Some I mentioned a little bit here, but the big takeaway from here is that many of these species of animals are dependent on the special conditions that are found only in this ecosystem. Now, white-tailed deer you find in a lot of different places. However, they do feed on the pitch pine, and so do rabbits and mice and other things, which bring in your other raptors. This is a ghost hawk, GOS hawk, and this is also one of the animals that live in the area. Now, things like fire, water chemistry, soil moisture, soil pH, and again, the vegetation are really what depends on what lives here. So the fauna is dependent on what these conditions are like in this ecosystem. And changes like pollution or climate change or habitat destruction or any kind of loss of biodiversity are going to have major impacts on all of these species, because they are so interconnected and they are so delicately aligned, especially with the forest fire ecology. So just a quick overview of the fauna here. We have 39 species of mammals, 299 bird species, 59 reptile and amphibian species, and 91 fish species, all found in the Pinelands. This includes 43 animal species that are listed as threatened or endangered by the New Jersey Division of Fish and Wildlife. And I'm going to click on this list for you as well. It's the same kind of list as the plant one, but this is all a list. So here's the birds, just to give you a quick idea of some of the things here: piping plover, bobolink, peregrine falcon, American kestrel, bald eagle. These are some of the birds. A lot of birds of prey here, and barred owl, terns, also coastal birds here as well, included in the area. As far as reptiles go, they're, of course, the bog turtle, again, endangered, timber rattlesnake, and a few other northern pine snake. Pine Barrens tree frog on the amphibians list, bobcats, and then, of course, all of the invertebrates. So this is the list of not just what's there, but this is the list of endangered or threatened, or federally threatened, or federally endangered. So again, the bog turtle is federally threatened as well. So a couple things on here that are important to take a look at. I'm going to shift back to the slideshow. Okay, so the timber rattlesnake I kind of mentioned in the last slide, but this is an interesting one for a few reasons. The timber rattlesnake is typically found, its typical habitat would be sort of dry, rocky ledges and mountainous areas. But for some reason, it's found in the New Jersey Pine Barrens. And it thrives there. It does well. It can even be found overwintering beneath the water or beneath sphagnum moss and some of the mossy, boggy areas. Back in the 1800s, they tried to eradicate this snake. They thought it was, obviously it's a venomous snake, and they thought it would be a problem. So the numbers have declined. But mainly, the main reason for the decline nowadays is habitat destruction. I can remember a few years back there, probably 7 or 8 years ago, they wanted to build a Walmart somewhere down there, and there was whole nests of timber rattlesnakes there, and I think they ended up relocating a majority or a portion of the snakes by capturing and relocating them, and they went ahead and built that Walmart anyway, as far as I know. But yeah, it's an interesting creature. Oops. The other thing I wanted to mention with the timber rattlesnake is, part of the interesting thing about why they found it down here, they did a study on it about, in their late 90s, but they continue to look at it at the College of New Jersey about why the population of timber rattlesnakes, or how they differ from other populations based on the geographic location. So they did some genome testing on that. It's interesting stuff. So finally, just to kind of bring everything together, the New Jersey Pinelands Biosphere Reserve is part of the Biosphere or Manned Biosphere Project by UNESCO. There are 28 sites in the US that are considered biosphere reserves. And the whole idea here is humans and ecosystems working together, trying to find a way to be able to live and work sustainably within a protected area, generate clean energy and support biodiversity. And one of the quotes from the video, which I'm going to show you in a moment, is to have nature make life better for people and people make life better for nature. And this is a really interesting, this was one of the first biospheres to be created in the US. But what's interesting about it is just the way it's designed to sort of mimic island biogeography, and sort of set up buffer zones of varying degrees, so that the outer edges are protecting the inner parts of the ecosystem. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video, and hopefully it works.
Biosphere reserves are not about nature conservation. They are about people.
They are sites designated by UNESCO that find creative, effective ways for people and nature to thrive together.
The world consists of many, many types of ecosystems. And in every type of these ecosystems, people have learned how to live there.
The role of a biosphere reserve is to uncover this knowledge, use it and adapt it for the future. We're looking for clever ways to create sustainable jobs, manage our resources, generate clean energy and support biodiversity.
It's all about bringing the people into the decisions.
Linking the technical data with the traditional knowledge from the local community.
Where the science, education and culture approach is used for nature conservation.
What's the most amazing about the Biosphere Reserve idea, for sure, is the network.
The UNESCO Man and Biosphere Programme connects the world network of biosphere reserves.
You can share ideas, practical things, with people coming from so many countries, in so many contexts. We have a common philosophy and common passion.
Together, from Canada to Croatia, we're sharing ways for nature to make life better for people and ways for people to make life better for nature.
People feel very proud and it makes them move and say, yes, we have something to do together.
Biosphere reserves are proof that a sustainable way of living is not only possible, but already happening.
Okay, I'm going to switch back to the slides. Oops. All right, and this last slide here was just to show the 28 sites within the United States. Just things like Isle Royale, Golden Gate, Channel Islands, Big Bend, Apalachicola, Everglades, and Denali, things like that. So the New Jersey Pinelands is one of the major ones within the U.S. So just to kind of sum up everything I want, the takeaways from this project was that, areas like the Pinelands are so important, not just for human consumption, for recreation, not just for that, although it's lovely to camp there, which I plan on doing very soon. But it's important to all of the organisms that live there. And there is so much biodiversity in an area where you wouldn't think there's as much. With a name like Pine Barrens, you wouldn't imagine there to be so much biodiversity and so much life. But it does need our protection. And that includes, habitat destruction, loss of biodiversity through habitat fragmentation, and pollution. Pollution's a big problem, and climate change. So thank you. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and have a great night.